This is going to be a very quick lecture on Chapter 18, the Hemi and lymphatic systems. This is a very short chapter in your textbooks, so if you turn to the first page and follow along. The format of the Hemi and lymphatic systems, it's that it's divided into subheadings, which are the spleen, general, lymph nodes, and lymphatic channels. Further division then is the same as everything else based on the type of procedure that's being done. The codes for spleen and lymph nodes are located in your index under the main term spleen or the main term lymph nodes or bone marrow. Okay, so some ways that you can find it there in the index. So if you turn to coding highlights, first of all, the spleen, it gives us a little A&P here, talks about what it is, what it does. That last sentence in that first paragraph, though, a person can live without your spleen because the bone marrow, the liver, and those lymph nodes then that are left take over the work of the spleen if you do have to have a splenectomy or a total removal of it. The coding shot is really good on that page. I kind of have a star there. It says if a repair of a ruptured spleen was performed and the surgeon removed only a portion of that spleen, you would report only the repair code because removal is bundled into the primary repair code, and you can check that out as well. Look at that code in your CPT books. It's interesting. They go through laparoscopy, introduction, general, where they talk about bone marrow aspirations and bone marrow biopsies, all very good things to read, along with the harvesting up in the next paragraph there. I do note, though, those two A bold words there, allogenic and autologous. Be sure you understand the difference between those two words, and those make a difference in your code selection. Allogenic, it says, is from the same species or human, such as cadaver, a close relative, or a non-related type donor. Autologous, okay, when we're talking bone marrow, it's collected from that patient, it's processed, and then later transfused or reinfused back into the patient. Remember, auto means self, right? So always remember that. Auto is self, allo is other, okay? They talk about stem cell harvesting, how they do it, how long it takes. Those are all really good. We talk about that more in advance too, kind of. With lymph nodes and lymph channels, the second paragraph there where it says within the lymph node and lymphatic channel subheading are two categories of codes for lymphadenectomies. They're based on whether that lymphadenectomy is limited or radical, and then they bold those terms and go on to tell us a little bit of a definition. A limited is the lymph nodes only. Radical is the lymph nodes or glands, if there are, and surrounding tissue. Okay, radical is a much larger scale that we do here. And so you can read through those codes about doing biopsies and lymphadenectomies there at the bottom. Mediastinum and diaphragm, and I should stop here and say, I'm looking at exercise 18.1. I never assign these exercises for you out of the textbook because the answers are in the textbook. It's a great way for you as you're going through the chapter, even if you just do the first couple or the last couple, okay, and then check yourself. It's a great way. One thing also, and I think I've said this before, but it kind of got brought up to me this week too. Where do you start? Okay, it's really hard in CPT, right? Where do I start in the index? How do I get started with this? There's multiple ways to find your answer. I could have 5 different students. You all came up with the same answer, okay, which was right, but y'all went about it different ways, and that's completely fine in coding, okay? It's kind of tough sometimes. There is no black and white. There's a lot of gray in coding. So make sure, okay, that you take the time to do a few of these exercises. That's really great help, okay, for you. Mediastinum and diaphragm is listed. Then next, they talk about incision. They talk about the different approaches that can happen. Your approach can be cervical and then neck area. It can be across the thoracic area, so transthoracic, or it can be at the sternum area as well. So they talk about incisions there, excisions, and then endoscopies. Okay, another place there to take time and just read those paragraphs and make sure you understand. The diaphragm, very short information here about the diaphragm as well. There's codes in the diaphragm subheading that are for repair. Okay, so like a hernia or a laceration it talks about as well. You find these in the index under diaphragm. Okay, that's it for chapter 18, hemilymphatic, mediastinum, and diaphragm.